The city always looked like it was built for people who believed money could rewrite gravity. Glass towers leaned into the ocean breeze like they were showing off, and private yachts slid across the harbor as casually as thoughts. In that world, Evelyn Hartmore didn't just live, she curated reality itself. Every smile she gave was measured, every invitation she sent was a test, and every event she hosted was designed to remind everyone else where they stood on her invisible ladder. Her birthday celebration was no exception. It wasn't just a party, it was an announcement. The yacht waiting at the marina was a floating palace of polished chrome, holographic lighting, and music that adjusted its rhythm based on guest approval ratings. Influencers were already posting teasers of the event of the year, though none of them had even stepped on board yet. Back at a quieter part of the city, Daniel watched his daughter Luna carefully glue cardboard spikes onto a hoodie that already looked like it had survived 3 prehistoric eras. She called it her Dino armor, claiming it helped her think better. At 12, she had a habit of treating the world like it was still unfinished, like rules were just suggestions waiting for better editing. She wasn't invited to the party. The message had come through Evelyn's assistant, wrapped in polite language that didn't hide the sharp edge underneath. Too young. Too unrefined. Too embarrassing for the image she was building. The words didn't shock Daniel. They simply confirmed what he had already accepted about his mother long ago. She didn't reject people, she optimized them out. Luna didn't cry about it. She just asked if dinosaurs would have been allowed on yachts if they were still alive. Daniel smiled, because that was her way of turning exclusion into imagination instead of pain. What Evelyn didn't know, what almost no one in that polished social circle knew, was that Daniel's life had taken a strange turn years ago. A legal oversight during an interstellar corporate exchange had tied several Earth assets into an alien-backed ownership structure. Paperwork so complicated it might as well have been written in another galaxy, because part of it literally was. And buried in that chaos were properties and holdings that no one had ever bothered to question twice, including the Hartmore estate itself. Daniel had never used it. Power, he had learned, was most effective when it slept quietly until the moment it didn't. As the yacht lights began testing their evening glow sequence, and the city prepared for Evelyn Hartmore's perfect performance, Daniel simply placed a sealed envelope on his desk. No anger, no hesitation, just timing. Because in his experience, the most devastating things were never shouted. They were delivered politely, with correct documentation, and no warning at all. Evelyn's world always moved in circles of control, and she believed she could predict every possible outcome before it happened. That was her real talent, not wealth, not charm, but the ability to convince herself that nothing outside her approval could ever truly matter. So when she finalized the guest list for her yacht celebration, she did it with the calm precision of someone removing unnecessary variables from a system. Luna was one of those variables. The decision wasn't debated, not even emotionally. It was treated like logistics. A child in a dinosaur hoodie didn't belong on a floating symbol of elite perfection. Evelyn didn't say it with rage, she said it with certainty, and that made it worse. Her assistant passed the message along with the careful softness people use when delivering emotional cuts wrapped in silk language. Daniel didn't argue. That, more than anything, unsettled Evelyn in hindsight. She had expected resistance. Maybe a long emotional negotiation she could dominate and dismiss. Instead, she got silence. The kind of silence that didn't feel like surrender, but like something being written down for later. While Evelyn refined her speech for the yacht toast, carefully inserting references to legacy, refinement, and knowing one's place, Daniel handled things differently. He didn't raise his voice, didn't call lawyers in a panic, didn't even send a complaint. Instead, he made a single call to someone whose contact number wasn't stored under any normal country code. The voice on the other end didn't sound fully human in the traditional sense, more like someone who understood human systems too well and had started finding them amusing. Elira, the legal liaison tied to the Valari Consortium, listened without interruption as Daniel confirmed what he needed. Ownership confirmation. Transfer validation. Quiet execution. There was a pause before she replied, almost playful. You still haven't told her she's standing on borrowed ground, have you? No, Daniel said. She prefers certainty. I prefer accuracy. That was the end of the conversation. Meanwhile, Luna sat cross-legged on the floor, drawing what she called space dinosaurs. They had rocket boosters instead of tails and helmets shaped like crowns. She asked if rich people had to pay extra to breathe better air on yachts. Daniel told her no, but only because the system hadn't figured out how to charge for it yet. She laughed like it was a joke. Evelyn, across the city, was preparing to step into a night she believed belonged entirely to her. She adjusted her dress, checked her reflection, and rehearsed her entrance like a performance meant to define everyone else's envy. She had no idea that somewhere beyond the reach of her influence, a document had already begun its journey toward her world. Not a threat. A correction. The yacht looked less like a vessel and more like a floating declaration of superiority. Lights shimmered across its multi-level decks, bending over champagne towers and designer seating like the ocean itself had agreed to behave for the occasion. Every guest on board knew the unspoken rule: smile, admire, and pretend none of this could ever be taken away. Evelyn stood at the center of it all, dressed in a gown that cost more than most people's yearly existence, delivering her toast with practiced elegance. Her voice carried the confidence of someone who believed reality was negotiable. She spoke about legacy, about refinement, about family names that deserved protection from modern chaos. A few guests laughed politely, others nodded, and some simply recorded her, capturing the moment for their own social leverage. What she didn't notice, at least not at first, was the small shift in atmosphere when the courier drone arrived. It was quiet. Almost polite. It hovered near the upper deck like it belonged there, waiting until the toast reached its emotional peak before releasing the sealed envelope into Evelyn's waiting hand. At first, she smiled, assuming it was a luxury gift or a symbolic tribute from someone trying to earn favor. She tore it open without hesitation. The first page changed nothing in appearance. Clean formatting. Formal language. But the second her eyes processed the header, something subtle broke in her expression. Legal confirmation of ownership transfer. At first, she laughed. A short, dismissive sound. The kind people use when reality briefly annoys them. But then her gaze locked onto the verification seal. Then the registry ID. Then the cross-jurisdiction authentication lines that no ordinary document could fake. The yacht's integrated system, designed to validate high-value legal material instantly, responded before she could even fully process it. A soft tone chimed through the speakers. Then another. Guests started turning their heads. Access verification in progress. Ownership registry update detected. Privilege hierarchy recalculating. A ripple moved through the crowd. Not panic yet, confusion. The kind that grows when people realize they are watching something they were never supposed to see. Somewhere near the bar, Zirin, still disguised as a human investor, watched the unfolding situation with far too much interest. He tilted his glass slightly, as if observing a particularly well-written piece of entertainment. "Ah," he murmured. "Primitive legal systems in emotional collapse. This is excellent." Evelyn's smile didn't disappear immediately. It fractured instead. Slowly. Like glass under pressure that refuses to admit it is already breaking. And then the final confirmation appeared across every embedded screen on board. Primary Property Authority, Daniel Hartmore. Secondary Beneficiary, Luna Hartmore. The yacht, the party, the carefully curated illusion of control, it all seemed to pause at once. Even the music adjusted, lowering its volume like it understood something important had just changed ownership. Across the upper deck, champagne glasses remained half-raised, forgotten mid-celebration. And for the first time in a very long time, Evelyn Hartmore had nothing rehearsed to say. For a few seconds after the system announcement, nobody moved. The yacht still glowed like a dream, but now it felt like a dream someone else had legally woken up inside. Conversations didn't stop immediately. They faded, one by one, as guests tried to decide whether they were witnessing a prank, a malfunction, or something far more dangerous, reality correcting itself. Evelyn held the document so tightly her fingers trembled, not from age or weakness, but from the sudden collapse of certainty. Her mind tried to reject what her eyes were seeing, but the systems on board didn't care about belief. Ownership records were already updating across networks she had spent her entire life assuming she controlled. The music shut off completely. Not dramatically. Not theatrically. Just gone. Like the yacht itself had decided the party was over. Luna wasn't even there, but somehow her presence felt louder than everyone on board combined. Somewhere in the city, she was still probably drawing dinosaurs with rockets, unaware that her name had just been stamped onto a level of authority most adults would spend lifetimes chasing and never understand. Daniel finally appeared through the holographic communication link initiated by the legal system override. He didn't look angry. That was the most unsettling part for everyone watching. He looked calm, like someone who had simply adjusted a setting that was long overdue. "This isn't about punishment," he said evenly. "It's about accuracy. You made a decision about my daughter based on image. The system corrected your assumption about ownership." Evelyn opened her mouth, but nothing came out that could survive the moment intact. Around her, guests began quietly recalculating their relationships, their investments, even their friendships. People who had spent years trying to get closer to her now looked at her like she was standing on unstable ground. Zirin, still amused, leaned slightly toward another guest. "On my planet," he said casually, "status conflicts end in ritual combat. Humans do it with paperwork. It's somehow more terrifying." At that moment, Alira's presence flickered into view beside Daniel's projection, calm, composed, and faintly amused. "The transfer is complete," she said. "There are no legal appeals available under 3 overlapping jurisdictional treaties, including the off-world clause." That detail landed harder than anything else. Off-world clause. Something the elite circle didn't even understand, but instinctively feared. Evelyn's empire, social, physical, symbolic, was no longer anchored where she thought it was. Daniel looked slightly off-camera, as if speaking to someone who wasn't there physically. "Luna will decide what happens to the property. Not me." That sentence changed the air again. Because it wasn't about control anymore. It was about removal of control entirely. The yacht remained floating, but the party never recovered. Guests slowly dispersed into uneasy conversations, pretending they had not just witnessed the quiet dismantling of hierarchy in real time. Later, when Luna finally arrived at the mansion, she didn't ask about ownership papers or legal systems. She walked through the doors wearing her dinosaur hoodie like it was a crown and immediately declared the biggest room as the Dinosaur Science Headquarters. Evelyn, now distant from the life she once curated, watched from afar without the same certainty she once carried everywhere. There was no final argument, no dramatic revenge, just a lingering truth settling into place. Some people built worlds to exclude others. And sometimes those worlds simply got reassigned.